dozens and dozens of favorite meals, but it's always been the company that mattered. So, yeah, I don't care what the meal is as long as I get to eat it with the right people.
We are so going to Chuck E. Cheese's. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Since you brought up Chuck E. Cheese, if we ever want to get rich, we just need to open a vasectomy clinic in the back of one of those puppies.
Oh, they're with the the PG-13 rating. Okay, all right, fair enough. I would have a brook trout and garlic mashed potatoes, and not just a small serving of those spuds, my friend. I'm gonna get in a tub and eat my way out. It's that's the story there. The next thing to think about is, we've all been in stress situations, and you can call it. You could say, well, what's the scariest one, or what's the one that frightened you the most, or all that kind of stuff. But I want to ask something a little bit different. What of those situations was the one that taught you the most? That you walked away with the biggest lesson from, and what was that lesson? Ian's shaking his head. This has got to involve your wife, Helen.
No, it's a real simple one. It was one of the earliest fights I ever got into, and then just that knowledge that this is chaotic. That was the thing, I hadn't been doing martial. I got into martial arts because I wanted to learn to fight properly. But I wasn't quite sure what fighting was at that point, if that makes sense. So not long after that, I'm swinging shots and I'm missing. And that was the thing I remember. I remember thinking, nearly swore then, pulled that one back. But I remember thinking, no, I'm missing. I can't believe I'm missing. What's going on? I'm trained here. I can hit the bag and hit the mitts. Why am I missing? So it was that just kind of realization that it's chaotic. It's chaos. You know what I mean? So you just kind of embrace the chaos rather than trying to deny it. So I think that was it for me, because it alters the way you start thinking about things and just starts you being critical and not accepting that everything that you get taught is as it should be, So that was it, that would be it for me. Swinging shots and then realise they were missing, and then, not getting into a panic thinking, why am I missing, but realising you missed. That's just the way it is, Yeah.
Why me? There are a lot of them that I've learned a lot on. The first one was huge, the chaos one. The nasty ones have been huge. There's been some stuff where some things I can't really explain happened, and those are always weird. The probably the one though that I fall back on was the shooting, because at the point where I got to the point where hand to hand I was more or less bored. Then changing the role on a tactical op and pulling the trigger, I was okay right up till that. And then it was supposed to be a less lethal weapon. It's supposed to be rubber bullets that bounce off, and it blew a hole as big as your thumb in this guy's leg. And all of the tachypsyche, everything slowed down. My visual field was about 3 inches across. All I could see was a little volcano of blood and meat. The whole thing was, maybe an inch across, but it was everything I could see. The adrenaline effects, how people dealt with it, because I was okay with it. How other people dealt with it was completely unexpected. And when it's something that, because I had some friends that had been involved in the use of force where they tried for probably 20 minutes not to hurt a guy and his heart blew up, and that when something is accidental can actually affect you more than when it's deliberate. If part of the tactical operation had been to blow a hole in the guy, then I would have been fine with that. I would have made my peace with it before the trigger, but it was supposed to be rubber bullets and bound off. That one is the one that just, it taught me at the point where I thought that I had the shit down, that if it's far enough outside my field, I'm back at ground zero just like everybody else.
Well, I don't know if any of my high-stress situations could compare to you guys. Please. Well, I've been very good my entire life about avoiding any fights, any dangerous situations. Well, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of trusting your instincts, knowing when to leave, knowing when to avoid a place, knowing which people you should just keep your distance from. I'm sure a lot of you already know that to some extent, or have experienced that to some extent. Other than that, it's, I mean, I grew up in a nice neighborhood, so there was less chances of me getting into some situation like that. Although, I mean, arguably, my martial arts school now in Jamaica Plain is not in the bestest of areas, but you know, you learn to deal with this, you know, the different scenarios that you encounter, and I mean, you realize that it might be like an Uncle Leo type of guy coming in, trying to cause trouble, and you realize that you really don't need to escalate the situation. You really don't need to take it more than it is. So I guess I mean, even aside from these situations, my high stress situations, I think what I take from is keep a calm mind, a cool head, and don't overthink it. If you think too much into it, then think about the what ifs and what could have beens and what if I did this or that, and it really starts to eat away at you after a while. But some things you really can't prevent, in my opinion. Even if you're the most prepared, like you prepared your whole life for maybe this one moment, but as fate would have it, sometimes you just can't control the situation, and that's what I try to prepare myself for in those situations, because that's usually the case that I find, that things don't go the way I planned. Things don't go exactly the way that I want them to. Well, I'm not in marriage yet, so I can't say. Again, I mean, in my life, my high stress experiences are different than I think what most of the people in this room have encountered. But those are, I'm speaking from what I can say from my experiences, and I hope someone can take something from that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably echo Nicholas there. You know, I've never had to get the shock of accidentally shooting holes in people when I wasn't planning on it. It's that's a different league to me. So, what I do know is the feeling of fear and the feeling of stress. It's exactly the same reaction within the body. It's just levels of intensity and your kind of familiarity with those, so that your scale of what is scary or frightening or stressful to one individual only registers halfway up the scale on someone else, because they're more familiar with it, they're more desensitized to it. So for me, trying to throw something extra into the mix, really. Obviously, when it's kicked off, the times when it's right on top, you feel like you're fighting on your own and you're outnumbered. All those kind of things are all instant. Probably the most stressful times for me of when I've had the aftermath. So when there's been the threat of consequence, and you're not sure when that's going to happen, whether it's going to be the next night, the next week, whether it ever is. You know, the early morning phone call, blah blah blah, and so those are things that, you know, I find far more stressful, because there's no real release. There's no tangible, let's get this sorted. And you do just want to get it sorted. And where I have been able to in the past, I would rather get the monkey off my back and just go and find them, face them, and deal with it, regardless of the outcome, in order to just get it done with, rather than sit and wait and dwell and wait for days on end for something that usually, in my experience now, I find that when someone's saying I'll be back, they very rarely are. Certainly if they're not back within a week or so, just because if they wanted to do it, they would do it that night. And so for me, that they're probably the more stressful ones, because it's quite intangible, and you can't take, well, it's difficult to take control of it. I think once you can take control of it and you start to make the action, then that helps alleviate the stress. That would probably be my most stressful time. Looking back, probably my most stressful times totally non kind of violent confrontation. It's something else. I call it my dark time. So and that's